Welcome back to Al Chapo Sports, everyone's least favorite sports show where we do the thinking so you don't have to. Back again with another Power-5 for 5 for Week 10 of college football. Let's get right into it. Starting with the Pac-12, we've got at number 5, USC. They are 7-3. They lost to Washington. Only reason I'm keeping them in the top 5 is because no one outside of the top 5 has 7 wins, and a loss to Washington is a loss to the best team in the conference. So, USC, you stay in for now. Number 4, Oregon State. They are 7-2. They got a win over Colorado. Solid win. Colorado's not the team we thought they were at the beginning of the season yet, but 7 wins is 7 wins. Congrats, Oregon State. Number 3, we got Utah. Also 7-2 with a win over Arizona State. Not the greatest team to beat, but 7 wins again is 7 wins. Number 2, Oregon at 8-1. They got a win over California. 8-1 is a record that's just undeniable. Their only loss comes to our number 1 team, Washington, who is 9-0 with a victory over USC. Dropping from the top 5 this week was UCLA. All right, the ACC. Number 5, we've got University of North Carolina State. I saw UNC as my abbreviations and freaked out. I was like, no, they're supposed to be ranked higher. No, we're talking about North Carolina State, who is 6-3, got a win over Miami. Oh, how Miami has fallen. But that's neither here nor there. Congrats, North Carolina State. Welcome to the top 5 first time this season. Number 4, we got Duke, 6-3. They got a win over Wake Forest. Congrats, Duke. You are bowl eligible. Moving on to number 3, UNC. They are 7-2. They got a win over Campbell. Who's Campbell? I don't know, but UNC has 7 wins. So, welcome to the top 3 spot. I think they were top 3 last week, weren't they? Who knows? Maybe. Number 2, Louisville. They are 8-1. They got a win over Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's a particularly weak ACC team, but 8-1 is 8-1, but that's not as good as our number 1, Florida State, who remains undefeated, 9-0 with a win over Pitt. Dropping from the top 5 this week was Miami. Moving on to the Big 12. Number 5, Kansas State, 6-3. They lost to Texas. Now, losing to Texas is losing to the best team in the conference, so I'm not holding that against you too hard, Kansas State, especially since you took them to overtime. It looked like you were going to win there for a moment. But, yeah, that's as high as I can rank you. Kansas State at 5. Number 4, oh, how the mighty have fallen, Oklahoma. The Sooners are 7-2, which is a good record, don't get me wrong, but they lost to their in-state rival, Oklahoma State, in what is probably the last time they will ever play, as Oklahoma is jumping conferences. Oklahoma's national championship aspirations have just gone out the window with this loss. So, number 3, Kansas, 7-2. They got a win over Iowa State. That's a conference win. Good on you. 7-2 is a great record. And you are placed over Oklahoma, who you beat. So, congratulations, Kansas. Moving on to number 2, Oklahoma State. 7-2 with a win over Oklahoma. The Oklahoma State comeback is now in full swing after knocking off what was, at one point, the number 1 team in the conference. Congrats, Cowboys. Moving on to number 1, Texas. Texas is 8-1 after their win against Kansas State, previously mentioned. They are still this conference's best hope at getting into playoff. Maybe they can do it. We'll see. It'll all depend on how the Big Ten and Washington shake up. Speaking of, let's move on to the Big Ten. Big Ten, number 5, we've got Rutgers. They are 6-3. They lost to Ohio State. Similarly to Kansas State in the last segment, you lost to the number 1 in the conference, or one of the 2 teams that could be considered number 1 in the conference. So you're not getting punished too harshly for that, Rutgers. You keep your number 5 spot. Number 4, Iowa. They are 7-2. They got a win over Northwestern. They are, I mean, we kind of been poo-pooing this Iowa team all year because they don't hold a candle to the teams in the Big Ten East. But 7-2 is 7-2. I see Iowa making a pretty good bowl again this year. So moving on to number 3, Penn State, 8-1 with a win over Maryland. I'm interested to see how this Penn State-Michigan game is going to shake out. That's going to tell us all we need to know about, well, Michigan and Penn State for that matter. 8-1, they're going to be in a great bowl. Unfortunately, I think the playoff is out of reach for them. Moving on to number 2, we have Ohio State, 9-0 with a win over Rutgers. 9-0, what can you even say about that? They're undefeated. They're not going to be tested until they play Michigan. So, but I'm keeping Michigan in our top spot. They are also 9-0. They got a win against Purdue, which isn't as strong of a win as a win against Rutgers, but I just feel Michigan has been the stronger of the two teams thus far. I could be proven wrong in rivalry week. No one dropped from the rankings in the Big Ten or Big 12. Moving on to the SEC. Welcome to the top 5, Tennessee. You are 7-2. You dominated UConn, which who the hell cares because it's UConn football. But regardless, Tennessee, you've made your way back into the top 5 with a 7-2 record to boast. Congrats. Number 4, we've got Missouri. Mizzou is also 7-2. They lost to Georgia. But I'm not punishing you too harshly because it is Georgia, the reigning defending national champions. And Missouri kept it pretty competitive throughout the game. It's going to be really fun this weekend to see Missouri and Tennessee go at each other because they are ranked 4 and 5. I guess this game this weekend will separate the boys from the men. Moving on to number 3, Ole Miss, 8-1 with a win against a very solid Texas A&M. Ole Miss, you are going to be in a big bowl come January. I can't wait to see it. You guys have been playing incredible. Moving on to number 2, Alabama. Alabama is also 8-1. They got a victory, a very good victory against LSU, who was a top 5 team last week. And it looked like LSU was going to run away with things at one point in the game, but Alabama came back, and they came back in force and got the win. That is why they are number 2. The playoff isn't out of reach for you, Alabama, but it's going to take a little magic. Number 1, of course, is Georgia, 9-0. They got a win over Missouri, who's a top-tier team. And what can you say? They're still undefeated. They are still the reigning, defending national champions, whether we like it or not. I don't see anyone upsetting Georgia at this point. I think they're a shoo-in to the playoff, along with the likes of whoever ends up winning between Michigan and Ohio State, Florida State, and maybe Washington, maybe Texas. We'll see. We will find out, I'm sure. Dropping from the SEC rankings this week was LSU. But that's it, guys. Comment down below. Tell me who you think the top 5 teams are for every Power 5 conference. Like the video, subscribe for more content, and I will see you guys next time.